enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of lies spinning from their mouths. Stop looking, listen for a little while. Pay no attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. Program reality, double thing duality, root upon the face of all mankind. Our numbers up and the dead woman sign. Go along to get along. Hypnotized by the siren song. The flames are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The horde's upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait your turn. Don't follow the strings to find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's best. Worldwide genocide. The overlords are hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. Pile of bodies rotten, covered in fire. But no one wants to talk about it. It's safer not to talk about it. I cut my strings, no more bowing to the masters. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol, in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. This is our news and current events roundup for Wednesday, March the 9th, 2022. We want to thank you for joining us. We're here in beautiful Carter County, Tennessee, coming to you live from the foothills of the Iron Mountain. My name is Cliff. I'm joined by my buddy Tim via Skype. How's it going, Tim?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
You do all that unmuting and stuff that you told me?
No, I didn't. But look, I switched scenes, so we are not muted on this one. So I think we're in good shape. Looks like we're coming through loud and clear according to the OBS program. If you're just joining us for the first time, we appreciate you. I was looking at the wrong camera there. I'm using this one on the table since I'm by myself tonight. If you're joining us for the first time, we'd like to invite you to join the conversation with us, to subscribe to the channel, to leave us live chats, to send us emails at the ironmountainhour@gmail.com. On the nights when Tim and I aren't live, we have a Skype room up so you can join us and call in and voice your opinion on any matters we may discuss, or, whatever, unless we have people bringing up some crazy stuff that we find boring, or don't want to talk about, then, whatever. But we're going to try to give you a good conversation to jump in on. So hopefully you'll want to discuss some of the things that we are discussing. So, Tim, a lot going on in the world lately, huh?
Yes, I guess suppose so.
What are you eating there, man?
You talking about that little skirmish over there? Or
Well,
what's
I think we'll get into that in a little bit, but yeah, it's just a lot going on right now. Um, I wanted to get into a couple of local things here in Carter County, Tennessee, before we went on too far, and well, really the Tri Cities, because it's a big place, and I frequent a lot of it. As we talked about in previous episodes, I think we're somewhere around 500,000 people in the Tri Cities and the surrounding area. So it's kind of like a miniature city that's just kind of, or it's like a large city that's spread out. When we're not in that large of a geographical location, if you think about it, you can drive from one end to the other, and you can drive from the far end of Johnson City to the far end of Kingsport in less than an hour. So it's not too.
consider that if you consider, I guess, like Tri Cities as one giant block of cities, more like a one giant community, you can be from one end of Elizabeth and all the way to Johnson City faster than you could be from certain spots of New York, and that's one city.
Yeah, that's exactly what
Yeah.
I was getting at. I mean, they have worse traffic, I guess, maybe worse than Elizabeth, and I don't know. I can't say because I've never driven in New York traffic, but
It's not. It's not even comparable. It's awful.
yeah, I was being facetious there. I imagine New York City is just it would make little Elizabethans seem like a walk in the park, as bad as it is sometimes. Um, but yeah, we got a lot of people in this area. When you consider how quickly you can get to everybody else in this area. Um,
Mm.
so in any event, we kind of talk about things that affect the whole Tri Cities, and I wanted to kind of shout out a couple of businesses here that I do business with that they've not paid me or they're not asked me to do this or anything. It's just a couple of companies that I like and I think the viewers of the show would like, so I'm going to put them out there. Well, one is Free Range Farm, that's in Elizabethton. They're on Elk Avenue there. As you get into, right before you get into the downtown area, they're on your right. You can get a lot of like grass-fed beef, natural soap and lotions and oils and body products and things like that from a local owned and operated business. And I have a little schedule here. They're doing, as we've talked about our um, yeah, B says, but they don't have Pal's traffic jam. Talking about New York, you're right about that. I swear to God, I'll lose my shit almost every day going through a Pal's traffic jam.
I used to love pals, and I don't want to rag on too much, and I especially don't want to give pals too far down the road because they're such a big part of the area. But I swear to God, I would pay them $1 extra if they would just make it the old-fashioned way that was unhealthy for me. I just don't like burgers anymore, man.
Really?
Like, I don't think they're
Oh
different,
man, I
but
think they're
just
good.
it's something else to them to like make them, I guess, more healthy or whatever. And I'm sure they are. I'd rather die faster, pay $1 more, and you give me the juicy burger back, guys. I'm sorry.
Well,
Bring back on.
I hadn't
hashtag
noticed that they changed them. It kind of, you got salmons with the Big Chief and pals with the Big Pal. They taste like they're made of the same patty. I'm not sure if they are or not, but they're very similar tasting burger.
They're similar, but they're not. But I'm telling you, the Big Pal walloped the Big Chief for a very long time. Now, I mean, be honest with you, they're about on the same level because I don't know, they used to, I think there was something like where they put the bun on the grill with the burger there for a second,
Huh.
so they got a little bit of juice. But I'm telling you, I was a Pal's connoisseur for decades, man. That's what people would get me for birthdays and Christmas cards would be full of Pal bucks and stuff.
Really?
I used to eat it so much, and I've really cut back on it just because they tried to make their burger a little bit healthier.
I did not know that.
Like, look at the wrapper. Next time you get a Big Pal or a junior burger, look at the wrapper. It used to, you would get a burger and you would have to try to not put it in your seat. You'd have to put it in the floorboard or it'd make your seat wet.
Yeah, nice and greasy. Yeah. Well, Pals originated in Kingsport, and they actually have 30 locations of Pals in the Tri-Cities area. So it's a pretty big local chain. The revenue from from 2021 was $118 million for gross revenue.
And
That's a pretty good sized business.
did you happen to see Pal Barter's house when it was for sale on Zillow?
Never did.
Well, let's put a pin on that. We'll come back to it when we get done with
Okay.
that.
Well, the business I was telling you about was Free Range Farm. We talked about in that we're going to have the Freedom Sales, which the Freedom Sale meeting for this month is this coming Saturday. If you want to email us at the ironmountainhour@gmail.com, we can give you our location on time on that and let you know what we're going to be discussing. That way you could join us if you want to. We just don't want to put the location out there so we don't get spammed with a bunch of bullshit or have, people show up that are, assholes or whatever. But in any case, this is Free Range Farm's homestead class schedule. If you're just hearing about it now, you missed it like me. You missed the February 18th class on Preserving 101, where they're going to teach you the basics of how to save and stretch the abundance of harvest. And that includes pressure canning and drying and stuff. So they showed everybody all that, fermenting, but we missed that. The February 25th, they did gardening. They did pasture management. This coming, the March 12th class is Bread Making 101. These are free. It is learn the basics of bread baking, kneading, proofing, how to tell when it's enough and what's too much, plus much more. March 18th, they're doing Chickens 101, the basics of keeping them, how to keep them healthy and happy, and keep their habitats clean and have it healthy for you too. March 25th, they're doing Goats 101. April 1st, they're doing wool spinning, and April 2nd, they're doing beekeeping. So some really interesting things, some really good skills to have that we've discussed on this show that you might want to have to get ready for whatever may come from this great reset or whatever may not. Either way, you're learning useful skills, and it's going to be good for you and your community if you're moving some of these things back to you, such as eggs and meat and bees and vegetables, all these things that we buy from the grocery store. We would be better served to grow them ourselves, and you could make some money doing it. So it would stimulate your local economy, keep money flowing around where you are, rather than going, paying for Mexican tomatoes. I mean, I think that's kind of crazy. You think about how many tomatoes we can grow here. Not that there's anything wrong with Mexican tomatoes, but why wouldn't we just grow them here and buy the ones that we grow here in the summer? And there's got to be closer tomatoes, and there's got to be greenhouses.
Majority of our tomatoes around here that are imported, which is kind of crazy for me because think about this: we don't get most of our tomatoes anywhere from, like, Scott's Farms is the biggest producer of tomatoes in this area, but they mostly make tomatoes for like cruise ships, restaurants, that sort of thing.
Is that right?
They bulk produce, and then they have their little, I guess, like upper end items that people really like the strawberries and corn. Then you got Granger County. There's a couple of tomato makers, but the majority of your
that's what I usually end up with for locals is the Granger tomatoes.
The Granger's the closest one. That's out towards Knoxville. But this time of the year and a little bit later, you'll start getting some oddball places like Michigan. They greenhouse grow all of them. Same thing with like hot house tomato. That just means it's grown in a greenhouse. And there's a lot of them in those big open lands. I don't know why there's not more. We used to have a big farming community around here, right? And then it kind of collapsed, just like all farming communities do, because of big farm.
Yeah, exactly.
But it'd be interesting if some people would just maybe throw some greenhouses on some of the big Allen's Ranch. I'd really like to see somebody use that land for something else besides housing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if it weren't for commercial purposes, I mean, you could grow. I've seen there's classes on how you can grow things in your window in your apartment in New York City. You can grow tomatoes even if you got a south-facing apartment window. So there's ways that we can do it if you're interested in learning that. But Free Range Farm is showing you some of those ways. There are a lot of options for it, including if you don't have land or a lot of garden space. So you should look into that if you're interested in that sort of thing. But Free Range Farm, again, in Elizabethton and West Elk or East Elk Avenue, that's, I don't know if it's west or east. It's kind of like right in the middle of town. So Elk Avenue, though, you can find it, Free Range Farm. The next business I wanted to mention was Supply Munitions. They are located in Piney Flats, Tennessee. They're a father and son ammunition company whom I frequent and purchase their products regularly. Now, these guys are also, in addition to selling ammunition, they've started selling buckets of storable food. They are selling silver. it kind of
Silver
goes. It
jug.
kind of goes right to. Go ahead, Tim. I can't hear you for me talking.
Since you said buckets of food, I remember that mega church pastor that we talked about a couple
Oh
weeks
yeah,
ago that
yeah,
sells buckets.
yeah. Baker, Jim Baker. Yeah. No, but they also right now they're selling silver dollars too. So kind of, kind of prepper stuff in addition to ammunition. But I mostly just buy the ammunition because if you buy ammunition online, it's generally cheaper than if you buy it local. But these guys are local and they sell it online. And you can, if you walk in, you can just grab it, or you can order online and then tell them in the notes that you would like to have them refund your shipping, and you will pick up locally. They'll do that for you too. But they not only have a good supply of lots of different calibers, but they are cheaper than most places online and almost everybody uh, locally. So I do a lot of business with those guys. I like them, and they're a father and son company, and they're operating out of the same property as the East Tennessee Distillery over there in Piney Flats. Now, speaking of East Tennessee Distillery, our friend Wilbur and East Tennessee Designs, they're located over there on the same property, and that East Tennessee Distillery produces Mellow Moon and several other lines of locally made moonshine, which is another business that you should give a shot. And you can buy their products in local liquor stores. From Tiny Hillbilly, who's going to join us on an episode in the future, and Wilbur, who was a guest where we discussed the Appalachian cryptids, who I hope will join us again. So those guys are really making it happen over there in Piney Flats. They're building up a place where you can get what you need, what you want, and it's local, and you're supporting the local economy. So I really appreciate what those guys are doing, and my mouse battery has died. So we'll be using the touchpad for the remainder of the broadcast, but that's all right. And let's see. There was another local business I was going to shout out. Or was that all of them?
You had two.
I think yeah.
Did you have
I think that was it. But we will hit some more in the near future. Tim, do you have some? I mean, obviously everybody knows Dr. Enough. If you don't drink Dr. Enough, grab you a Dr. Enough every now and then. They're delicious, and that's a local business that supports the local economy. But what else you got, Tim?
Oh, I was going to ask, is that Free Range Place? Is that one that's kind of like almost near Pro Sound?
Yes, it's right before Pro Sound. Oh, no. Now I remember. It was H&H Meat Market. Now they're up in Blue Springs, and they have a location that they're getting ready in Johnson City, over by what's that? What's the housing project there on Main Street, off of Main Street? Keystone. They're opening up a location on Keystone. They have the building, they have their sign up, but they're not open yet. I don't know when they are, but they have local meat also, and they beat the grocery store prices most of the time. You can go over there and get you some, you go to the grocery store, chicken wings are like $4.69 a pound. Well, I get them all the time at H&H for like 69 cents, 99 cents a pound. You get you some local beef, and get you, they have sales all the time, but it's comparable to grocery store prices and usually cheaper if you buy the stuff that's on sale, especially for ground beef and chicken and pork. And they have their home style bacon, their homemade, local market bacon, local pork sausage. So those guys are awesome. Just go over there and talk to Jeremy. He'll tell you all about it at H&H Market here. But let's get on to some news and some current events. If you don't, do you have any businesses you'd like to shout out there, Tim?
No.
All right.
Not just yet. Do my research first.
All right. No doubt about it. Good thing to do. So I'm going to pull up a couple of local stories first. This one is from WJHL, and we're going to look at a local or a fired Tennessee Highway Patrol trooper being served an order of protection, and I'll just play it for you and let you check out what WJHL
after the
has
agency
to say.
placed
Arrested twice for violating an order of protection against him.
and Nicolas Collins was
Sorry
a
about that,
state
folks.
trooper
It's wanting to do it automatically rather than when I want it to. It's operating on its own terms. Here we go. That's just a photo.
You have to just do it.
I think the full video is not wanting to
trooper
show.
in the
but
Fall Branch
that's all right. I'll try it again. See, it's not wanting to let me.
district for the Tennessee
Anytime
Highway
I play it,
Patrol.
it's wanting to start it over. Or it's not wanting to let me start it over.
News Channel 11's Ansley Daniel is live in our Kingsport Bureau with the video from the day he was served that order of protection. And Ansley, you also spoke with Collins' attorney.
Yes, I did. And here are those affidavits of complaint against Nicolas Collins, 2 of them being violations of orders of protection, 1 of them including domestic violence as well as vandalism.
I got it, brother. I know why you're here.
Okay.
And
Well,
I will accept them with no problem.
give me just a second. There's some procedures I got to follow here, okay?
The almost 20-minute video starts out with Nicolas Collins introducing himself,
I'm Trooper Collins. And I know exactly why you're here.
Okay.
as well as Trooper Blankenship and Sergeant Moore, who you see there in the video. As Washington County Lieutenant Mike Foster reads off the order of protection, things take a turn.
I don't need you to read it to me.
Listen, I'm not insulting your intelligence.
Yes, you are.
The
When
law,
I ask you a question, I'll get to it.
the law says I have to read this stuff verbatim
I
to
know what
you,
the damn
okay?
law says. I am the law.
Well, okay.
The video continues to get heated, with several curse words and Collins becoming angry.
You wasted 30 minutes of my damn time, which is precious.
I have to serve this to you the same way it's served
have
to
to give that
anybody.
The former trooper is being represented by attorney Joseph McMurray out of Kingsport.
Some of those things that he said are indefensible. I cannot, there's no words that I could put together that will make you think that, oh, well, that's okay. But at the end of the day, if you look at the statute, it's not a crime. It's not a crime to say, I am the law. It's not a crime to say, I know what the law is, and slam your police cruiser.
McMurray says the video and affidavits don't provide all the context of the situation.
This is a small snapshot of Trooper Collins' life. I mean, this is a point that undoubtedly he's struggling with, and it's a personal struggle. I don't think he made the best decisions in how to react to that, but I've yet to see enough evidence that would convince me that those decisions that he did make were crimes.
While the video doesn't bring any charges against Collins, it is being used in court.
There's your copy. You don't have to sign it.
I don't need the damn copy. I've got it.
Do you have any questions?
How'd you like to have that guy?
Collins is set to appear in
stop,
court
Ansley.
here in
There we go.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I would say that video right there will be making its way onto the YouTube circuit pretty soon. There's a lot of YouTube channels, they call them auditors, AUDITOR. And it's just they're not great people, but I mean, I guess they are kind of necessary. It's like people that have had bad run-ins with laws, and now they just kind of go and see if they'll do things that are not illegal. They just look strange. And so any cop that has that chip on his shoulder looking for a fight will go after him and do something on camera. And now they're really busting these people. That's why I keep thinking that in the future is self-policing on a level between these people going after the cops and people that are going after people taking packages off front doors and scamming the scammers and pedophile hunters, that sort of thing. No, I don't think that guy has the temperament to be a police officer. That's Judge Dredd's line
That's what I thought of immediately when he said that. I am the law. But hey, what do you think about that defense attorney, man? Usually you won't hear him. He's
unfortunately, like, we're talking about like law here. Like it's not illegal for him to say that. But there is a psych evaluation that police officers are required to take, and I don't think a guy running around thinking that he is the law and throwing affidavits at other cops has the temperament to be a cop. I think you need to go find another job.
I think that lawyer might need some help too, because that the video is not what the problem is. The video, I mean, he's being charged. He's not being charged with saying I am the law. He's being charged with violating order of protection and a couple other things. I can't recall right offhand, but I don't know. Maybe that lawyer was a little slicker than I thought. But he seemed to try to. You know, we talk about straw man arguments a lot. I don't know if we have on this show much, but for those who may not be familiar with the term, the straw man argument is if I am arguing something and Tim is trying to disprove what I'm arguing, but the facts are in my favor, he will try to build up something that I said, or, you know, a part of my argument that I didn't actually say. Like that's what this lawyer did. He built up a straw man argument for somebody to try to beat down that, oh, my guy's in trouble for for throwing this paper and saying I am the law, when really that's not the argument. That's not what he's in trouble for. But he's built up this straw man so that someone will attack it rather than what he's actually being charged with. And sometimes it's used successfully and other times not. I kind of doubt that in this case it's going to be successful. What do you think, Tim?
It's not going to be successful because the law is really it's like mathematical equations. I mean, there is nuance in certain things, but it's pretty black and white what a cop is allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, and when something's illegal, it's illegal. When it's not, you can't use the straw man argument when it comes to law. That's like a debate tactic that you would do in like college.
Exactly. And it's something that that journalists do, or activists, I guess, who try to pose as journalists do when they're appearing on television spots and things like that. But you also see it in things like here's a good one that catches my attention. With the 9/11 attacks, you had the whole when loose change came out, you had the argument that jet fuel can't melt steel beams, right? And that was kind of their mantra. And to disprove this, you saw several things. For one, was the one thing that actually got me interested in finding out what actually happened on 9/11, which I still don't know completely to this day, but was Popular Science or Popular Mechanics? Jim Meigs was the guy in charge of the thing, and they put on this presentation on the History Channel where they were debunking Loose Change, a film made about 9/11, and some of the loose ends that don't add up, and a lot of the questions that people had. And there've been several versions of it, but in all the versions, there is the concept or the idea that the heat from the jet fuel is not enough to melt the steel beams. And you see in that Popular Mechanics or Popular Science, I don't remember which piece, they explain that you don't actually have to melt the steel beams. You just have to compromise their structural integrity, which requires a much lower temperature than actually melting the steel. So therefore, we all feel better because this shows us that, okay, these guys are just crazy. I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but jet fuel can't melt steel beams. It doesn't have to melt steel beams, right? The tower can still go down. But the fact was, we saw molten steel. We saw that confirmed by the color of the molten liquid as reported by metallurgists. We saw molten steel at the base of the tower for many days after the incident, after the attack. So the fact is, there was molten steel from this attack. So whether or not there had to be molten steel for the tower to come down, there was molten steel, and that is a fact that is cleverly avoided by the building up of the straw man argument, which says, well, hey, it doesn't have to melt steel beam. It's bringing your attention over here and focusing you on something else, that away from the point that's actually being made. And I saw a video that came out years later. I mean, this was probably 5 years ago, maybe a little more. But it was a video of a blacksmith showing you the same thing. Hey, look, this is steel. Here's a steel girder. Look, I apply this amount of heat to it. It does not melt the steel, yet the steel loses its integrity and cannot support weight. So it's the same thing over again. It's the straw man argument.
Wasn't there? I heard. I mean, I'm pretty much like a tape recorder for a lot of this stuff. Yeah. For certain conspiracies. 9/11, I've pretty much just listened to people talk about it. To quote Mr. Bravo, I haven't looked into it a lot, just listened. One of the arguments I've heard for why the jet fuel was not the only factor involved was that there were tanks of diesel or some kind of flammable units deep down underneath the trade centers that were used for purposes, and that is actually what caused the steel beams to melt, was actually when those went up.
Now I don't know how hot that diesel burns, but I'm pretty sure diesel is a cooler burning fire than jet fuel. But that would have counted, even if it did burn hot enough to melt steel, to melt the steel down in the base of the tower.
It would have to, because I don't know which the numbers were, but the third tower, or whichever one it was, the Solomon building, I think that's what
tower
it's called.
number 7.
That one never got hit by a plane. That one completely failed because of the diesel fuel that was linking all those towers together went up underneath that one, and that one fell.
I got to ask you,
completely.
Tim, do you believe that?
I'm just telling you the story. I have no
I know
idea.
the story. I just was curious if you believed it.
Man, I don't believe anything
Okay.
as
Well,
crazy.
I just
really,
if you watch the video of that, I kind of have to pull that up now.
well,
No, I don't really have to. I don't really have
my
to.
evidence-
We don't have to pull it up, but I can just say look at World Trade Center 7 collapse and look at a controlled demolition. World Trade Center 1 and 2, you'll have some people try to tell you that was a controlled demolition, but it looks a lot different from a traditional one. What?
Have you seen? I don't know which one it is. I guess I'll reference someone. I saw a video. I'm pretty sure it was Mark Passio. He was saying that he believed it was resonant technology that caused the towers to fall, because if you watch the spire at the very end of the video, the spire powders away, just like the rest of the building. So as a building collapses in the dust, the spire does the exact same thing. And his technology was a technology that the public's not aware of.
I think you're
whether or not.
Sorry, I keep thinking you're done talking. I'm not trying to interrupt you. I think it's definitely some kind of exotic technology. As you mentioned, the spire does disintegrate into dust, but also the floors that had not hit another, we were told they were pulverized in a pancake collapse, but you'll see these floors that did not touch another one. You can watch them turn to dust in front of you. So that is very odd. And it is, as I said earlier, some people say I've seen even videos say in a classic controlled demolition. Well, this is not a classic controlled demolition. I'm not saying it wasn't controlled, but it was definitely something that was exotic versus what we are used to seeing in the demolition field. But that kind of got me off track there. But I was just trying to explain a straw man argument, and I feel like that's what that attorney made. But let me get, I keep trying to use my mouse, which has a dead battery. Let's get on to our next story here. Because let's see, how long have we been going so far? We've been on 32 minutes already, Tim. I think we're getting comfortable with this.
In Kingsport at the end of the month on March the 31st at...
All right. Here's something that I thought was a little creepy. I don't know exactly why, but it's just one of those things I felt like I should share with y'all. If you're interested in watching the show, then you might think the same thing, but I feel like you probably want to know about it. This is from WCYB out of Bristol. Washington County, Tennessee. Tennessee deputies get mobile fingerprint units through grant. So they're going to have these fingerprint units to identify suspects in the field. They can check a database to see if there's a warrant for the arrest. Let's look here, and I'm not sure, but let's see where the grant actually comes from, because that's kind of what I'm interested in now. It just sounds creepy to me in general, but I'm not sure why. What do you think about it, Tim?
I think that sometimes I see a technology and I wonder what in the hell took it so long.
Yeah.
Like we're just now having things where, because like right now you got I mean, I'm not saying that's a good thing, because that's a new level of being able to check up on people. Yeah. Like you could fake an ID and you can lie and you can do a lot of things. It's pretty difficult and pretty extreme to remove your fingerprints. So I think that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That might actually prevent a whole lot of issues if somebody can just swap a fingerprint or something and be like, oh, this person doesn't have any warrants out on him, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it would be a useful tool for police, and I guess a useful tool for you if you were suspected of committing a crime that you didn't, and this could easily disprove it. But I don't know, maybe it's the whole landscape of the smart grid and the whole credit score, and all these things that are coming into play that we're seeing with they've got the Vax passports and the social credit scores, basically, or what is it, environmental social government scores that are a lot of people are saying are going to be coming down to the individual person. And we saw how easy it is for the world to turn you off with what's happening in Russia right now. They turned off banking for regular people. They turned off Swift bank transfers. They turned off Apple and Google Pay. They turned off your Visa and MasterCard services if you're a Russian citizen. So that just shows you how easy it is for them to essentially unperson you and remove you to the economy. I mean, they did it with the blink of an eye. There was nobody, you know what I'm saying? It was one thing after another, and I hate to.
It's the same thing they've been doing to other places for a long time. Like, I guess people don't consider that they've done that to South Korea or North Korea, and what's the other one? Iran.
Mhm.
Is that the one that there's only a couple of different areas that don't utilize central banking? And I think the only reason they've really played nice with the Russians for so long is there's so many oligarchs up there, and they do have quite a bit of oil, and they do have quite a bit of shady countries that you can do illegal activity in. Have you seen the reports that maybe there might be labs in Ukraine?
Yes,
Out there?
and I was going to get into that a little tonight. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, we can go to that.
Can we save that for a little later?
Oh yeah, you can bring it up whenever you want to. Um, I just thought that was worth bringing
Yeah,
up.
absolutely
That,
it is.
like we've been mongering this whole time. I mean, I don't like taking sides when it comes to people killing each other so black and white like it is right now. But like it really just kind of bothers me how people start beating the war drum with no
You're
facts
right.
whatsoever. It's like Russia and Ukraine to go to war with each other, but countries don't just attack each other for no fucking
Right.
reason. They just don't do it. So I'm
Well,
just,
we're
when the dust settles, I'll know what happened.
and same here. We're seeing a whole lot of okay. Here's my main problem. Not only we've seen a lot of lies coming out of Ukraine with regard to what's going on over there with the war, but that's not abnormal. Even though we're getting it much more quickly with social media and things like that than we used to. It's pretty normal to see propaganda, to see lies coming out of war zones, or to see just confusion because it's a chaotic scene. But I think we've seen it more in real time with this conflict than with any other. We've seen things like there were the reports that the largest nuclear plant in Europe was under attack by Russia, that they were bombing it, and it turns out the videos they were showing it was flare gun shooting, and that they actually attacked a group of Ukrainian soldiers that were stationed nearby there, but there was no actual. We even heard people saying that there was leaks, and this was going to be another Chernobyl or Fukushima, but.
Earlier today, that they were saying that they were worried that Chernobyl was going to hit and there's going to be a nuclear explosion and stuff. So I don't think Chernobyl's been active for a really long time.
I don't think they sent anybody back in there. There's just the animals there. But that's funny. There's the animals can live there and they don't seem to be having any like genetic things. But that's a story for another episode because we talked about the plutonium eating guy. We can talk about those together.
Well, when we talk about the I guess radiation and stuff, because if we do radiation, we need to do a whole episode.
That's what I'm
because
saying.
there's a conspiracy that nuclear bombs don't exist, and there's a conspiracy well that radiation is essentially just steam heat and it's not as radioactive as they say it is. But to bring up kind of some evidence that I've never been here, but this is apparently some evidence that maybe radiation does exist. Apparently things don't decay in Chernobyl in certain parts of like 3 Mile Islands, like because where the radiation doesn't allow certain bugs to exist and stuff, things will just be there for quite a while without decomposing. But apparently there's a mushroom that eats radiation too, so we can bring that up.
Okay.
Too.
Yeah, that sounds like it'll be a good episode. I think we could do a lot on that. So we'll do that in the future. It'll take us a little research to get ready for that, but we'll do that.
Nuclear bombs are fake is one of my favorite conspiracies. But go ahead.
Some
time.
people would say there's a few 100,000 Japanese who would disagree with you.
I'll make the argument that that's not what
Well,
happened.
I'm sure you would have to, or it wouldn't.
I'll make the argument.
You couldn't do your theory if you didn't make that argument. So let's look down here and see what else we got in our local stuff today. We got a Tennessee company here is recalling hand sanitizer because it has methanol in it, which methanol is poisonous. I think you'd probably have to drink it for it to be poisonous to you. I don't think if putting it on your hands would kill you. I don't know, but if you have some of this Tennessee Technical Coatings Corp hand sanitizer, it'd probably be a good idea to send that stuff back because it's got methanol in it.
So does it like absorb through the skin?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does, but you'd probably have to. If you can imagine the amount of methanol that would absorbs through your skin, I think most of it would probably evaporate.
Just makes you, like just makes you wonder, like, why is it so dangerous? Because if you're just killing germs with it, it's like extra flammable.
Well,
like somebody hand sanitizer on, they strike their Zippo. And
well, people do drink it. And as crazy as that sounds, it's usually addicts who are trying to sneak, but people do drink hand sanitizer.
Okay, well, yeah, I know that's true, but it's one of those specific things that I guess you just don't want to, that you don't feel like you need to think about because it's so dumb.
Can you imagine drinking hand sanitizer? I mean, like jail? Ugh.
No, but I mean, like, I've gotten a little bit in my mouth before, like where I just didn't get absorbed in my hand before. No, that's a new level of desperate.
Okay, this one's going to be a little controversial, but let's go ahead and do it. What do you say? I said it's going to be a little controversial. You ready for it? Here we go. This is from WCYB. Loading ad. No, we're going to mute this ad. Sorry, they're
just mute
Chris Rock. No, that's not Chris Rock.
Look at that. Look at that trunk. Where's the advertising?
Ice cream for 90 days. All right.
Eastman Credit Union.
Well, thanks, Eastman, for that.
Public schools from using textbooks and instructional materials which promote or normalize LGBTQ plus issues or lifestyles.
While lawmakers say those issues should be left up to the parents, others say attempts to erase part of our history and literature. A Tennessee bill that would ban textbooks in support of LGBT plus issues from being taught in public schools advances in the General Assembly. House Bill 800 and its companion Senate Bill 1216 are similar to a measure recently approved by the Republican-led legislature in Florida.
I've had overwhelming concerns by parents that our schools are not, public schools are not being up to stuff. We're not focusing enough on science, reading, and mathematics. They feel like a lot of this social, emotional learning, social agenda is distracting.
Tennessee Representative Bruce Griffey is the primary sponsor of the House version. He says a lot of parents would prefer LGBT plus issues to be taught at home.
When you introduce something in the classroom from a teacher, regardless of how it's kind of presented, it kind of has the stamp of approval from the state of Tennessee that this is appropriate.
Griffey says it's his understanding that teachers can bring in supplemental materials that may not have been screened by the state's textbook and instructional materials quality commission.
That's how a lot of the LGBTQ agenda, I think, is getting into our schools, and I think most parents would rather just be left out. This has nothing to do with promoting hate. This is just saying, there's difference of opinions in the public on these issues.
Chris Sanders, executive director of the Tennessee Equality Project, calls the proposed legislation the very definition of censorship. Quoting now, Tennessee students have a right to a full education. This bill attempts to erase parts of literature, history, the arts, and social studies. Under this bill, teachers wouldn't be able to teach the majority opinions of some of the great Supreme Court cases of our time. Education should prepare students for the real world, not a make-believe world where LGBTQ people don't exist, end quote. The bill is now in the hands of the House Calendar and Rules Committee.
It's not against gay people, whatever. It's just trying to strike a balance between both sides of this controversial social issue.
So what do you think are the biggest challenges facing our school?
So it's here in Tennessee, the fight there between over what's going to be taught in our schools. We've heard about it all over the nation. Michael Crow says, I dropped a nuke in Call of Duty. Which Call of Duty are you playing, Crow? I've played the shit out of some Black Ops, all the Black Ops, particularly 2 and Cold War. Cold War, I think, is the best Call of Duty of all of them. I'll fight you over that. I've been playing Call of Duty since I don't know, the second one, I think, and playing LAN games on PC. And I think Black Ops Cold War is the best one. What do you think, Crow? You play Call of Duty, Tim?
I haven't played Call of Duty in a long time. I used to play it quite a bit. The one I guess I was best at was the first Black
Yeah.
Ops. I was pretty like I was one like that was probably the only game where I knew that I was really obnoxious to the other players.
He's playing Modern Warfare 2.
Modern Warfare 2, I skipped that one and went straight to 3. My issue with Modern Warfare 3 was it was almost a little too like crisp. I don't know how to describe it. Like I almost like the graphics were a little distracting for the multiplayer. And I had a problem with Black Ops 2 because I thought the graphics were so like it was almost like they were stylized to the point that I wasn't really a fan.
Well, with Black Ops 1 and 2, I felt like they were really more, even though they were on PS3, they were more kind of realistic. When you got to 3 and 4, they were kind of crazy and sci-fi looking, and I wasn't as big a fan. They weren't as realistic. But when you got back to Cold War, they got back to kind of that style from Black Ops 1 and 2.
Yeah, it's Infinite Warfare. That's not Modern Warfare.
Yeah, no, it's separate. That's the robots and futuristic shit.
One of my issues with modern gaming, and I guess this is probably like at some point in time, whatever the generation below, because Gen Z likes to drop OK Boomer. I have no idea what OK Millennial is going to be at some point. Like one of my issues with Infinite Warfare is modern gaming, and I think this is growing pains because I think it's going to get better. There's like this where games are almost becoming more cinematic. They're becoming more of a movie. So in the one-player part, you're pop, 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 run, 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 pop, pop, slide, and all of a sudden you're pushing A over and over again to get something to twist, and then you got put A over and over again to get like some kind of. It's like all these cinema sequences of specific things you got to do. That would be a whole lot cooler if they wouldn't interrupt it and just do it automatically for you or something and let you just keep shooting.
Yeah.
So it's like remember. Like in the days of Nintendo 64, Castlevania was probably one of the creepiest franchises to come out. But when it came to 64, where the polygonal structure just wasn't there yet. It was lacking. It ruined all the creep factor to Castlevania. It almost kind of shit the franchise for that system.
And it might have been
Luckily,
that might have been a really good game too, but I couldn't get into it. Like you said, the polygons looked pretty shitty.
So,
I just recently.
I thought it wasn't a good game.
Really?
Like it had a lot of bugs and stuff like that.
Well, I just recently got Symphony of the Night on the PS4. They had it on sale a couple of months ago for like $7.99 or something like that. I was like, fuck it, I loved that game back in the day, so I went ahead and downloaded it, and I watched the intro, the 3D intro from the PS1, and yeah, it was pretty primitive looking compared to what we have today. But the gameplay and the graphics from the actual Symphony of the Night game were still good. But But yeah, so that was about the time that's, I think it was probably just a year or two after that N64 Castlevania came out, and it did look pretty rough.
Crow ain't better. What's he playing?
He said Modern Warfare 2.
Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that. I think that's honestly I don't remember. They came out with one that was Modern Warfare. There's been like 1, 2, 3, 4 Modern Warfare, and then like they came out with another Modern Warfare or something like that. I can't keep track with all of them. I'm a Black Ops man, like I said. Recently, I've been playing DayZ, like I told y'all in a previous episode. Simulation, survival, zombie game. It's got a steep learning curve, but it's pretty damn fun. But to get back on topic here, as we are like 49 minutes in, and I've not touched anywhere near the stuff we want to because me and Tim, one of the reasons that this podcast happens so easy is because me and Tim get together and we end up shooting the shit for like 2 or 3 hours every time we do anything. We can't help it. So
easy to shoot what you're full of.
No doubt about it. All right, let's pull up some more here. Oh, I was going to say that that we were talking. We showed the video about the crisis in the classroom, which really sounds like Channel 11 is kind of trying to make it as dramatic as possible for us to discuss it. But
you know what? Probably part of the problem is the depths that people take it to.
Yeah.
Like I don't like the Supreme Court thing actually might be a little bit of a straw man argument, honestly, because I don't think they're going after court decisions.
Yeah.
Like we know, like everyone knows what they're going after. Like they want to make sure that at 8 a.m. in the morning, and people think I'm being like hyperbolic or facetious. So I'm not. They don't. They want to make sure at 8 a.m. there's not a drag queen wearing a thong with like unicorn dicks on its head,
saying "sit on my lap, little girl," while I read you a story.
just absolutely as absurd as that sounds, that literally happens. Drag queen story time is all over the place. When they talk about the LGBT, I don't think. Man, I really feel like the issue is because I try to take it from both angles. I really feel like more of the people that listen to us have grown up around here, obviously, so they can kind of take it from. They wanted the churches to kind of get out of schools a little bit, and people look back on that and think that it was the devil, that people just want churches out of school. But I remember going to school and having parents tell us while we were going in, now when they teach you that evolution, just read it and get an A and get it over with. And like, so you're caught in this weird, like, whether it's true or not, you can't have somebody like actively pulling the rug underneath you from one angle, and it just be straight with what it is. And I really feel like, I really feel, because what I'm saying is, like with the church thing, if you had like Christian teachers, they definitely just would have done the same thing. And you get in like this weird position where if you want the parents have every right to tell the kids that something that they're learning is not correct.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely think that is absolutely the way it needs to be. If they're teaching something bonkers, you should be able to correct it. It's the state who knows what they're teaching.
Oh, I just did a similar thing with my daughter. She was learning about JFK being assassinated, and I was like, you know what? It's like when the teacher asks you, you go ahead and answer the questions, but and then I gave her my explanation for what I felt it was, which would take way longer than we have on this episode. But
why are they testing them on details of the assassination?
They weren't, but they were just telling them that Lee Harvey Oswald killed him, which is like what your standard history. So we just talked about. They didn't get into any real depth on it, but they're just in 5th grade.
To capstone what I was trying to say about the LGBT in the classroom, the guy's right in his statement that LGBT people are not going anywhere, and the population, especially with the more alphabet they put on the end of it, it's a bigger and bigger group. And anytime you make a group, people are drawn to it. So I really think it's too heavy-handed to say none of this in the classroom. That is an overreaction. But we're in Tennessee, and we're watching all these other states kind of have some crazy stuff happening. So I do think it's an overreaction. But at the same time, I had a college professor cancel class for 3 weeks after Donald Trump's election.
Yeah.
Like, I guess I'm trying to find a way of saying that it's not the information that a lot of people have a problem with. It's when you get people that have this information and they are proselytizing it like a fire and brimstone evangelist. That's what people have a problem with.
Yes.
I agree with stuff
well,
these very activated people have, but they take it to the point where they want to start getting violent with it and teaching weird shit.
Well, and you saw the guy talk about, and you mentioned it might be a straw man argument, but I don't think that. Now I could be wrong here, and if I am wrong, I don't agree with it. But I don't think they're trying to teach you like not to show, like you said, Supreme Court decisions and not to discuss opinions on. I mean, gay marriage is the law of the land as of 2012, 2011. So you can't teach history and you can't teach social studies without putting that in there, right? But like you said, we don't. It's parents who are looking out for their children, and they probably also don't want to see what they feel like people are encouraging their kids to be trans or encouraging their children to be gay when really we should let children be children. Actually, here B says, think of how confused these kids would be around here who aren't familiar with trans and such. Let kids be kids. Teach them how to change a damn tire, the importance of self-responsibility. Yeah, I mean that would be a better use of their time. I also agree with the state representative there, at least in one part where he says we are behind, especially since COVID, due to in mathematics, in science, and reading. Everybody's behind. I mean, it really did. If you don't have children in school right now, then you just have no idea how fucked up the education system got over the last 2 years while they were out for COVID. And if you do have children in school and you don't think, I mean, that's good for you, but Jesus, man, it's been really rough on the children that I know. And really a lot of them should fail the grade that they're in if they were going by the same standards. But,
I guess speaking what we was talking about earlier with like straw man arguments and just different debate tactics, like, do you, because this is where the LGBT people lose me. and not all of them. Like obviously the super radicalized people that are just out to proselytize.
Yeah.
They want religion out of church or out of schools, but they want their own belief system taught religiously in an
Right.
institution.
Yes, that's a good way to put that.
Very hypocritical. I think in my opinion, I think school is a place for math. And like you see people posting memes about, you need to pay off my student debt. And then later on, they'll be like, why didn't school teach me how to do my taxes? And it's like, I don't know at what point people don't understand that there's a place that you want schools to teach you how to pay your taxes? Yeah, I agree. That'd be great. Maybe stop teaching me the details of weird stuff that doesn't make any sense. Like the damn globe changes so often. We learned that whole thing in like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and there's not a single country that's probably the same in some of these areas, especially like the Soviet
Yeah,
Union.
the Soviet Union was totally gone, and we had to learn it all over again. Yeah, but
there is way better use of people's educational time, and I don't think you can come cancel me because I don't think they should be teaching the Bible in school, but I also don't think they should be teaching 6th graders 75 pronouns. There's a better use of your time. Get together and make people mix it up and talk to each other, and they will learn each other's pronouns on their own.
yes, and that's what I was going to get to on it, Tim.
The damn school is trying to be the moral authority, and that's what's getting on my nerves. You kicked the church out, and now you want to take the role that the church was fulfilling. And you're going to do as shitty a job as they did.
Thank you. Yes, and now it makes my point almost moot by you saying that so concisely. But no, man. I mean, I don't have any. I grew up. My aunt was gay. I grew up around a lot of gay people, and I never had any issues with anybody because they were gay or trans or whatever. It's like, and you mentioned they keep adding a lot of different letters. And you ever see that show, The Boondocks? And the old man asks his grandson what LGBT means, and he says, I think that's lettuce, gay, bacon, and tomato, granddad. But no, I don't have a problem with any of those people. I've hung out with them. I've been around them for a long time, and I don't have any problem with them, and that's because I came up around them and I saw that they were just people, just like everybody else. I didn't have to have anybody preach that to me. I would just interact with them naturally, just like you said, and I become friends with them, and there's never, I mean, it's never even been a thing that I've even thought about. And I saw in the paper, in the Johnson City Press, I think it was 2 days ago or a day ago, they had a whole section on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a group that was local that was trying to spread some of these teachings and using the Chamber of Commerce to have people like we've got to find more minorities and get them to come in here. They're saying, there's people leaving. We were talking about in a previous episode how people graduate college and they leave here. And in this paper, it's making it sound like, it's because our diversity is so low. But when in their own statistics that they put in the paper, they said that we are 17.9% minority in this area, where the statewide average is 9.1%, and the nationwide average is just a little bit more than that. So we're higher than the nationwide average, yet they're saying, well, we don't have enough. I mean, the reason people are leaving this area is not because there are not enough black people here. I'm sorry, that's not the reason. There's a multitude of reasons, but to try to say that if we have our businesses teach classes on how you have to, businesses are going to hire whoever's going to show up and work. There's no reason to be doing this in this day and age. We passed this mark a long time ago. We've gotten through this. We don't need to be preaching to each other all the time. I'm sorry, we just don't. We just need to live and let people interact with one another, and these things will happen naturally. There's no need for governments or nonprofits or anybody else to force this stuff at this time. It's just unnecessary, and it creates resentment. And like, look at me. I'm here getting pissed about it, and I agree with most of the things they're talking about. I just get pissed about, you know what I'm saying? I agree that gay people should be able to get married. I believe that trans people should be able to live however they want to live. As long as nobody's hurting anybody, let them live how the way they want to live. But just to have the government, to have institutions constantly trying to force this on people, it creates resentments amongst people who already the people you're trying to reach, you're not going to change their mind. I mean, I'm not going to change your mind by arguing with you about something that we vehemently disagree with. That's a subjective matter. I mean, it's not something that I can present facts to you that are going to change your mind. So maybe just let people be people and interact with one another.
You can change minds, but you can't change someone's mind when you say, this is the way this is. And if you try to say it's any different, you're either a bad person or we're going to hurt you. Because, because even then, you're going to make them want to either look into the information out of curiosity. That's a way to create an enemy. And it's always a bad way. You don't create enemies. Just try to create an open dialogue and mix together and try to figure out who agrees with what. I really think one of the issues is, people need to address is how we scream that we're being divided and conquered. So you'll see your Jesse Jacksons and your Sharptons and any of your white grifters, any of those people, they'll say they divide and conquer, and then they just go along with it.
And then they proceed to divide and conquer.
Yeah, and then we pretend to go along with it. Like we all forget that that's what they're doing. It's just really confusing. Anytime there's a vulnerable group of people who are being taken advantage of, that's always who Big Brother tries to sweep in, make feel really good about themselves, because that's who they're about to weaponize. I'm really not worried, but just more concerned, because the next group of people that are about to be weaponized is Appalachians, man. It's like one of the last group of people that you can just openly make fun of for any reason. And it's kind of I get why a large percent of blacks are still pissed to this day, because if you start from a slavery thing and you go all the way up through Jim Crow and stuff, you're just going to have residual pissed off, right? You have your Thomas Sowells and all those people that are saying, hey, look, you need to get over it. But there's not, that's like a cutoff point, right? There's not like cutoff point.
I've lost your audio, Tim. Hang on just a second. Play something for me.
Yep.
Okay, I got you.
It was going wow, 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 wow. It sounded like Mr. Anderson was about to absorb me. Or Agent Smith, sorry. I guess I think Appalachians are going to be the next group of people to try to be weaponized, because they're pandering to them way too much. They've got Dolly Parton singing on and getting a part of every little thing. Now they're building up Miley Cyrus. They're Tyler Childers is Appalachian. They're really building up Appalachian people too much. And Appalachian people are some of the most vulnerable people, because everybody around here they were like my whole parents, one side of the family came from Maryland. And it was specifically because they were too poor to live in Maryland. So they came somewhere else where they could be poor and not live in a shitty place like Baltimore. And that's basically all of Appalachia, is people who came here to get away from living shitty somewhere else. And so most people here didn't come from wealth. They came from the land. And a lot of those people are pretty salty. You don't have roots. The government beat your people up at one point. Now you've got 10 generations of traumatized against authority. I guess people they try to call Appalachians racist, and we've got more Mexicans and Cubans than black here than Asians here than I know of other people that are allowed of it. Because every time I go out of state, other places, they ask us about that sort of thing. And it's like, we talking about you don't have black people. You never fucking been to Louisiana or Atlanta? It's like, of course, Memphis. We got the dummies. It's really weird how places not in Appalachia still think about us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not salty about it necessarily, but I know a lot of people are pretty damn salty for the fact that they still get picked on for being home of hee-haw, So that's vulnerability, and they're going to use those people at some point, and it's not going to be pretty.
I think that's the reason a lot of people want to leave this area, because, well, at least of our generation did want to leave this area, is because they had that, kind of idea in their head about what a person from Appalachia is, and
shameful. The media made it very shameful to be a hillbilly.
Yeah, that's it. And let me get on to our next story here, if I can get this technology to operate properly. You know how that is. Hey, let's get out of the local stuff. Let's look at this real quick. This is a tweet from Elon Musk, and you can't hear that.
And liftoff, Falcon 9, Falcon 410. Vehicles pitching that way. And liftoff, Falcon 9.
There goes the Falcon 9 rocket into space. I'll tell you what, I hate social media sites on desktops. I think they want you to use them on their phone because they made the desktop sites unbearable. But that was Elon Musk's tweet saying another 48 Starlinks just reached orbit. And he made the news recently because he was saying that he has Starlink in Ukraine, which was the only internet that wasn't able to be shut off in there. So he's launching more of those Starlinks, and we've talked about those in previous episodes. And it sounds like a neat idea. But it's another one of those things, like a lot of these technologies, they're awesome. I just don't like the people who are controlling them.
Was Starlink satellite internet?
Yeah, that's what it is. Satellite internet. So a network of satellites encircling the globe to provide internet at high speed to anyone, anywhere, is the idea. And it sounds like a good idea. And I actually like Elon, so that's one of the things I'm less suspicious of. But, Elon... who knows? He could be a bad dude too. I know. You are suspicious of his motives. I was going to read an article. Huh?
I'm suspicious of everybody. Though,
I know you are. I know you are. That's one of the things I like about you. This article I was going to read from the Mises Wire is from the Ludwig von Mises Institute. It's a libertarian think tank. It was talking about, will inflation turn into stagflation? And I think that's a pretty interesting discussion to have. Because we have seen a lot of inflation at this year. We saw a 7.1% on a year-to-year basis, 9.5 annualized. That's a pretty bad rate of inflation on the annual rate. Especially when you look at that, economists were predicting a 5.25% inflation by December, and this back in October, right? And then it was actually 9.5%. So they were way off. That's a huge discrepancy, and that's what these guys are supposed to be experts in. And we've seen since the beginning of the pandemic, the Federal Reserve has continued their quantitative easing, which is basically pumping more money into the economy to keep things going. We saw back in the 2008 crash, that's pretty much what they did to protect the economy, is just inject more funds into it, when really this was the whole problem came from people investing funds that were, well, not the whole problem, but a big part of the problem came from people investing funds that were owed on, that they didn't actually have the money for. People owed them money. So they're like, oh, well, you owe me $10. That means I have $10. I'm going to invest that $10. And then you don't pay me the $10, then my investment is fucked. So instead of actually correcting that, we just had the Fed pump more money into the economy at the time, bail out the banks, bail out the insurance companies, and the problem continued to grow. So we are now, especially after COVID, and with President Trump and President Biden spending in COVID, handing people $1,200 checks, $500 a month, this has continued to inflate the money supply. Now we're at 7.1% inflation. That means basically prices across the board are up 7.1%. But if you look at things like automobile prices, used cars are up insanely high. I mean, go try it. A 2000 Honda Civic was going to cost you what it would cost you 10 years ago because the prices are up so high. My car, I just paid it off as a 2015. I paid it off a couple of years ago. It's actually worth more now than it was when I paid it off. That's not because my car is more valuable. It's because the monetary supply is less valuable. So the Mises Wire article that I was going to read, they talk about stagflation, which is basically when we have the economy stagnates and the prices continue to rise because the money supply continues to increase, and they don't think we'll do that. They point to the fact that in the 70s we had far worse policies than we do now, and although our policies with the Biden administration are pretty poor right now as far as executive regulatory actions, they are not as bad as they were in the 70s, and they won't be catastrophic because he says that Biden doesn't have the political capital to get a lot of these heavy-dutier things done. And he may be right, I don't know. But whatever the case is, we do see the Fed continue to keep low interest rates in when really a lot of economists agree they need to raise interest rates to draw back in the money supply to keep prices under control. But we'll see what happens with that. I don't think they're likely to do that right now, but the Meeswire thinks that they may eventually do that. So let's look at NPR. We got sticker shock. Headline: Sticker shock. Sticker shock, Tim. Gasoline tops $4.17 a gallon. A new record. Which it is pretty bad, man. I've got a Ford Focus. It's a 3-cylinder turbo. It's a gas saving model. It's got like a tiny tank. I think a 13.5 gallon, 50-liter tank, something like that. It usually costs me something like $35 to $40 to fill it up, and it was $55 this week. And I usually fill up with premium because it's a turbo. I filled up with $55 this week, and it was. I filled up with 87 octane this week, and it was $55. I filled up my wife's car, which is normally, it's like $45.50 to fill up with regular, and it was 60 something. My work vehicle, I normally fill up for $40. It was $70 today. So things are pretty crazy, and we've got prices up across the board. Groceries are up. Gas is now up. It's getting pretty rough out there for the working man.
I think it's it's that whole that boomerang policy, whatever we call it, ricochet policy, where they use one side against each other. We've had the Republicans screaming about wanting the Keystone Pipeline opened up for a very long time.
As soon as Biden got in.
Now the Democrats are the ones opening it, and the Democrats are okay with it.
Oh, are they opening it now?
That's what they're fighting for. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
I didn't hear about that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying Biden is saying open the Keystone Pipeline. I'm hearing Democrats now saying.
Okay. After they argued for 5 years that it was such a terrible thing that was going to kill everybody.
Yes, they always use a side to argue one. That way you get the Republicans really wanting something, but the Democrats can't because it's environmental. And now because we're going to war against Russia, that evil villain that was associated with Trump, now we can open up this pipeline and nobody's going to make a fuss about it.
Interesting.
That's how they use your free will and your vote against you. You don't have to get people to do things. If you like it, the reason democracy works so much better is it's easier to convince people to do things than it is to make them to do things, because then they won't go to war with you if they think they can choose.
Right. Well, I'm going to look this up real quick. I had an article, but I'm not finding it. But this is actually, there were a couple of Democrats that were petitioning. I went on TV today in Tennessee and petitioned Bill Lee to put a moratorium on the gas tax in Tennessee for 90 days, which I could agree with, and then I could say, let's eliminate that permanently.
That's a lot of taxes on gas.
Yeah, but I think we paid 27.4% or 27.4 cents on the gallon for gas. Every gallon of gas you buy, you're paying 27 cents to the state of fucking Tennessee. Now that I like the state of Tennessee, sorry, I joked, but I don't want to pay them 27 cents out of every gallon of gas I buy. But of course, now we're paying $4 a gallon. It's less of a percentage than normal, but still it adds up. I mean, how big's your tank? My tank's 13.5 gallons, so if you take 10 gallons, that's $2.70 for every time you fill up going to the state.
I'm not sure how big my tank is, but I drive a Veloster.
It's probably 50 liters, 13.5 gallon.
Basically got a new version of the CRX made by Hyundai, and it cost me $43 to fill up today.
Let's see here.
I mean, that'll get me over 400. That'll get me like 450 miles.
Let me pull this up real quick. Yeah, that's how mine is, dude. I'll get I fill up. I can get 450 to 550 miles, and that's why I bought that car. And I've not. I know I'm not going to say I've not been pulled over. It's a very nonchalant car though. But it's a gas saver. I get 35 to 42 miles a gallon depending on how I drive. Oh shit. Let's see here. The Tennessean. I lost my story. I was going to tell you guys what those Democratic lawmakers' names are. Oh, yeah. John Ray Clemens is one of them. And Bo Mitchell. Those are from Nashville. They sent Bill Lee's office a letter on Tuesday asking the governor to implement an executive order or push legislation on the moratorium for a 90-day freeze. They say it would cost the state about $224 million. which he says Tennessee could weather given its budget surplus. That's pretty crazy that you have Democrats advocating for tax increases and saying that we could do without $224 million, but I'm going to have to go ahead and agree with them. Generally the other way around, and anytime that people propose cutting $224 million from the budget, they proceed to kick and scream and caterwaul about how it would be the end of the world if we were to cut that money out. But now it's okay. And I agree with them, but I just thought it was interesting that it was coming from that side of the aisle when it's usually the Republicans that are doing that.
Having that two sides of the aisle thing is what makes it so divisive, because we're so tribalistic and group minded that when we see someone we agree with say something, we're already automatically inclined to agree with them, unless you've got a little bit of base under your feet, unless you've really thought your principles through. But that's not really, especially like when you're 18 and you're allowed to vote. You vote very arbitrarily then, surely.
Oh, I remember let's see, I wasn't 18. My first election I could vote in was 22, and it was the 2004 election, and I supported George Bush because I thought we shouldn't change commanders in the middle of a war. So, that's totally not how I would look at that situation today, but it goes to your point.
Yeah. Well,
let me show you this here meme. Stephen Colbert was on his show saying that an extra buck or two is a small price to pay for a clear conscience, and we see our American guy here filling up his diesel truck for $6.29 a gallon, and then here comes Colbert in his golden chariot pulled by a unicorn and says, an extra buck or two is a small price to pay for a clear conscience. And then he flies away into the sky while, your red-hatted America man is standing here with his $6.29 a gallon wondering how he's going to feed his family. And I saw a similar version with George Takei from Star Wars who said something very similar. I don't remember exactly what he said. I was looking at his Twitter feed, and he tweeted that. And as you may know, George Takei played Sulu on the original Star Trek series. So I retweeted him and said, "Go fuck yourself, Spock."
That's funny.
But
yeah, a lot of that's like you start taking political sides with, but I really think a lot of that boils down to, it's like, I don't give a crap if George Takei's a Democrat or whatever, but man, you're in Hollywood, you're so detached from the rest of America, you should probably keep your mouth shut about the price of anything.
Yes, dude, that's my point. It's like, I don't care that they're Democrats. If they were Republicans, I'd be saying same shit. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, and both parties, can go stick it up their ass or whatever. I do tend to, when I tend to vote Republican, unfortunately, because that's usually who I feel like is the lesser of two evils. But I vote for a libertarian a lot of times on the national level, but on local level, usually that's usually who I'm more in line with.
I just try to keep my mouth shut about things that I can't relate to. Like when people one of the only ones I can give you is like racial things, I guess, because like that's something you definitely can't be. I can't convert races. Well, some people think you can. But like that's the reason I keep my mouth shut about a lot of the BLM stuff. I keep my mouth shut about a lot of the Asian the Asian hate. I keep my mouth shut about all that stuff because I can't say one way or the other what's going on, because I'm a white dude out here in East Tennessee, and I don't have a lot of input. And so I think it's like those idiot celebrities that were doing the Imagine song and all that stuff. It's like, you're so detached, just shut up and don't comment about things you don't know about.
Yeah, I saw somebody saying that if we really wanted to end the war quickly, just send all these celebrities over to sing Imagine for Vladimir Putin over and over again, and he'll be like, fine, I'm leaving.
They just put him in a giant bird cage and make himself like pet.
Hey, listen, this story here, this is why I asked you if we could get Drew back on this Sunday. I've got the Spectator Index reporting Biden signed an executive order instructing agencies to consider creation of a U.S. digital dollar. Mm-hmm. Pretty big deal.
You call it your ATM and debit cards already there.
Yep. Well, it is. 90% of our funds are digital, and only about 10% of transactions are cash. But I think that means they are looking at the elimination of cash would be my thinking there, because we already have, as you said, the digital dollar pretty much. That's 90% of our currency. Why would they consider the creation of a separate digital dollar unless it was a replacement of cash?
Yeah, I think they just want to get rid of cash because it's easy to do the under the table stuff.
Yeah, I read an article.
I felt like that. I think they created Bitcoin and cryptocurrency so they could get rid of cash, because you needed cash to launder money. And now that you have Bitcoin and what all those other ones, you can launder money through those. Can't you though? I guess I need to ask you that, because I don't know. Like, I know fairly recently, there's some idiots that got busted trying to launder Bitcoin through a different series of things. They ended up getting busted by internet detectives. So apparently you can catch people if they don't do it correctly. So I might have
you can especially if you're doing it through an exchange rather than having your own wallet. And I don't know a whole lot about it. Maybe Drew could tell us more about it on Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, if you're going through an exchange like Coinbase or something like that, you can't expect to have it work like Bitcoin actually works. You can, at that point, you're just using it as an investment. It's not actually what Bitcoin is supposed to be.
Bitcoin investment was never what it was supposed to be.
Right, it's supposed to be a currency. It's for people for bartering and transacting. So even though it can be an investment, there's definitely some people who have used it as an investment to great avail. That's the idea, is that we can actually barter with it and have a free interchange of goods and services. But
so we can buy money and people don't know who did it. Back
to the gas memes. Pete Buttigieg was in the news. He was telling everybody that, well, we don't have to worry about gas prices because we can just buy electric cars. Buy electric cars and everything will be okay. Pete Buttigieg, after telling someone who drives a 15-year-old Honda Civic to buy a $60,000 electric vehicle if gas is too expensive. Yeah, that's about how I feel when hearing him say something like that. Yes, I can't afford $50 to fill up my gas tank, but I'll run right out and buy a Tesla. And I saw some people saying, oh, it's okay, you can just buy a Nissan Leaf, a used Nissan Leaf for under $10,000. I've seen these fucking things on Craigslist for 10 years now. Nobody can give them away because the batteries drop out on them after a couple of years, and you only get 50, 60 miles on a charge of them. So I guess if you lived in like a city, it might make sense for you, but I guess that, well, really, cities are probably the majority of the population, but for everybody else who doesn't live in a city, that's not making much sense for you. And not to mention the battery shits out on you after, a few years, and then you're looking at multiple thousands of dollars to replace that battery.
Yeah, I've heard those big super batteries are really expensive to replace, and that's kind of the issue with all electric cars. Like, the engine goes out on a car, you're kind of screwed. But if the battery goes out on an electric car, you're really screwed.
It's a lot rarer to have a total engine failure where you're going to have to be on the hook for a $5,000 engine within. As long as you perform the maintenance on the car, it's a lot rarer to have that within 10 years versus an electric car. You're almost certainly going to lose your battery in the amount of time and have to pay that. So I've got an interesting one here on.
Well, I just wanted to get your
get into
thoughts
Ukraine just a little bit for tonight. We're running along here because you and I tend to run our mouths, me in particular, tonight. But I wanted to show you this video from Bryce Mitchell, UFC fighter.
On the whole Russia and Ukraine situation.
Here's my first thought is I'm not going nowhere to fight none of these wars for these politicians. I'm staying at home, and when the war comes to Arkansas, I will dig my boots in the ground and I will die for everything I love, and I will not retreat. If this country's invaded and Everybody's saying, well, we gotta evacuate, we gotta leave, I will not. I will dig my boots in the Arkansas soil and I will fight for the people that I love, for the land that I love, and the way of life that I love. But I'm not going overseas to fight. I don't know what's going on, to be honest, brother. I really don't. There's so much stuff, and I don't think nobody knows what's going on fully. There's been so much political corruption in that area. You got Biden and his son making a shit ton of money off of and using our tax dollars to bribe their people. That's treasonous, in my opinion. So you got Hunter Biden and his son using our tax dollars. Hey, if Ukrainian government, if you don't do this, we're taking your tax dollars. He shouldn't be giving our tax dollars to that country anyway. We got veterans out here sleeping on the street, and you're going to give our freaking tax dollars to these Ukrainians and all. Brother, I don't know what's going on over there, but I'm not going over there and fighting, and God bless anybody that's over there fighting, and I hope that the shit just gets solved. And man, I don't like war. You know what I mean? I don't want people dying and all that stuff. I don't want to be, but I don't know what's going on. There's so much stuff that I think that's corrupted that we just don't know what's truly going on over there. And I pray all those people are safe.
So I'm right there with Bryce. I think
just
he
wanted
sums
to get
it up
your
pretty well.
thoughts on.
As we looked at last week, I really feel like the news media is really pushing this thing, wanting the American people to support military intervention by NATO or by the United States. And I think most people are not. We've got war fatigue, man. Even from engagements such as Iraq and Afghanistan, we had enough of our young men and women come home injured, come home in caskets. We've had enough of this stuff. And you know, I thought something that was very interesting. There was a Rasmussen poll that found they questioned whether people at certain income levels supported a military intervention with the Russian-Ukraine situation. And on the low end, the people who made under $30,000 a year, there was the lowest end. I think it was like 37%, though. I can't believe 37% supported this. But as you went up in the income brackets to up over $200,000 a year, you had support for military intervention up to 60%. Now, overall in the country, we were still at 49% support in favor of military intervention. But I saw several pundits and talk show hosts questioning, why do you think it is that people of higher income are more likely, almost twice as likely, in fact, to support military intervention? And they were saying, oh, is it because, I don't understand this, is it because that the economy doesn't affect them as much? No, it's because they are not going to be the ones that have to go to fucking war. It's going to be the people who make, you know, under $30,000 to $50,000 a year. For the most part, those are the people who are going to be over there killing people and dying for whatever cause it is that we're doing. So yes, it does make sense that they would be less likely to support military intervention in another country that doesn't directly affect them. So that's all I have to say about that. We got Matt Walsh here saying the people asking you to make sacrifices for the sake of Ukraine are not making any sacrifices themselves, just like the people who ask you to make sacrifices to fight COVID did not make any sacrifices themselves. Hopefully you picked up on this pattern by now. And you know, it was, whoops, there goes my camera. And several do what?
They should start calling the Democrats the cake party, because it's a whole let them eat cake. Everything's let them eat cake.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't wear, you guys need to keep your masks on, but when we go to the Super Bowl, we're not going to. You need to social distance, but we're going to have a Christmas party. You need to stay inside, but we're not going to. And now that we've got this, it's time for everybody to pinch a little bit harder. We got to sacrifice a little bit more, but it's easy to sacrifice when money's not an obstacle.
Yeah,
you know?
It is. Gosh, I totally lost my train of thought there. I had something I was going to say. And I think it's funny how, well, I don't think it's funny. Several episodes ago, I don't remember exactly what episode it was. It was right after I had COVID, so probably at the end of January, beginning of February. Dustin and Tim and I got together and we discussed the world moving on, and we showed you that the COVID thing is coming to an end. People are getting tired of these restrictions and they're not following them anymore, right? Well, we still have the COVID numbers in the news all the time, and I said to you that I believe that this shows they recognize the unpopularity of these policies and they're going to move on to something else. And my prediction was that it was going to be cyber warfare or something of that effect. Now, I still think that's right. I think that's coming down the pike, but I think that this is what?
Like the biggest cyber warfare of all time was like 2 days ago. It's been going on, so that's happening right now.
Well, what I mean to say is that I feel like the Ukraine and Russia conflict is the setup for the cyber pandemic that we saw Klaus Schwab talk about. We saw the nations prepare for with cyber polygon exercises. I think.
Well, every time you hear somebody say something hacker, what's the first word that goes in front of it? It's always Russian hacker. So they've been buzzwording that phrase for a very, very long time, whether it's true or not that all hackers come from Russia. But I feel like Russia has been the boogeyman for that too.
Yeah.
Like they've been boogeyman in Russia for a lot of things. I mean, it's almost obvious that they were going to go to war with them, as obvious as they want to go attack China, unless that's also a double cross.
Yeah. Well, we talked about how these sanctions only hurt the small people in Russia, and basically Russia has largely avoided the impact of them by deciding to transact with China. So, this 8% of our oil that we were buying from Russia, that's just going to China now. So, yeah.
I've got about 900 people texting me.
What are they texting you?
So probably just a bunch of people texting me, so I just need to respond.
Oh, not about the show, just texting you.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see if we have any chats lately. I haven't checked the chats in a minute. Let's see if we got anything. Michael Crow says, so they can cut off our cash flow like the Canadian truckers in Canada. And you're absolutely right, Michael. And that's one of the reasons I think this thing is so creepy. That's one of the things I think the fingerprint scanners are creepy, because it's helpful to be able to identify people, but at the same time I feel like that's a tool to, once you identify a person, you can cut them off. It's to directly identify someone who you are able to politically oppose and financially remove from the system. And that's what we see going on with Russia, but Russia is avoiding that by making more business with China. And so it's almost like now we are pushing Russia. It's almost like we're pushing financial collapse on ourselves by cutting Russia out of the financial system, because they pay, 8% of our oil market. That doesn't sound like a whole lot when you think of it as a percentage point, but when you think about the total amount of oil that is, and the fact that is being removed from our economy and that it's going to the Chinese economy, that's a big deal.
They're trying to get it here is what they're trying to do.
I think.
All right. Big brain team here. I think the reason that they're trying to do that with Russia is to get the Keystone. Like the environmentalists, they claim to be environmentalists because they want to make their money off other things. I know maybe that's a weird way of looking at it, but like it's almost like the guy who's screaming the loudest about things is, like the mega church pastor. I know I always come to those guys, but like the one who got busted for snorting meth off a gay hooker's butt crack, and he had like done like all these angry anti-gay.
No, I don't know that one. I must have missed that one.
I'll try to figure out which one that was. There was one that got busted, and he kept doing a lot of really fiery anti-gay speeches at different events, and then it turned out he was like banging male hookers, and that's kind of how, like, if you look at whoever's saying, Trump's with Russia, Trump's with Russia, Trump's with Russia, is he? I don't know. I mean, I know Biden and Hunter are in Ukraine, but like, it makes you wonder who's really buddy behind the scenes in the end, is what I'm saying. Like, are they really environmentalists, or are they just wanting to own that market so they can push everybody towards gas?
Well, we did find out recently that Hillary Clinton, back in 2014, she was giving a speech to private donors, and she told back then that a lot of these environmental movements were coming from Russia, actually, because they were trying to discourage fracking to hurt the U.S. economy. And I don't know if that's true, but it goes in direct contradiction to what the environmental wing of the DNC and the Democrat Party were saying. I had a story tonight about how, because I was talking about how creepy all this stuff is, about how AI-powered tech landed a man in jail with scant evidence, but we'll look at that later. But we'll look at that in another episode, but they used these computer algorithms to determine that this man had shot another man based on basically the same technology, just more advanced, that they used to prove where the gunshots came from when the committee revisited it in 2000 or in 1980 from the Kennedy assassination. They determined that they couldn't have come from Lee Harvey Oswald in Congress. They used an advanced version of this technology, which wasn't good enough to exonerate Lee Harvey Oswald, to convict a man for a crime. But I will look at that at another time. But I think it was interesting, so I thought I'd still bring it up. But we are running pretty long tonight, because I just really wanted to do about an hour show, and we're about an hour and 35 minutes. So I think we'll call it a night tonight, even though still had a few points I wanted to make, but some of these things take a long time to make these points, and I think we've gone long enough for tonight. But we had, oh gosh, no, we can't not mention this though, Tim. Did you see that? I know I hate to just all the way at the end of the episode, but I guess at this point it's way less likely that YouTube could flag or pull the episode for it. But did you see recently? It just came out in the last day that we saw reports that from conspiracy theorists, or quote unquote conspiracy theorists, saying that Putin was actually attacking these areas where these bioweapons labs, we'll say, to try to avoid the YouTube algorithm. Everybody can understand that. But Putin he was bombing these bioweapons laboratories. But when you look at kind of the maps, they didn't quite add up, so I was kind of suspicious of it. But then you also saw, and this is a sure sign that you're onto something, you saw the fact checkers coming out saying, no, there are not U.S.-funded bioweapon laboratories in Ukraine. So when I see the fact checkers come out on something, I automatically want to look at it, because they tend to fact check things that either are true or have a kernel of truth and are onto something but are not quite true, so they can still debunk them. So I looked into this one a little further, and no, there do not appear to be any official, which would they really label them officially as bioweapons laboratories? But these are bio laboratories in Ukraine, and there are I can't remember if it was 11 or 14 that were close to the Russian border. And there was this story that was being debunked by PolitiFact and all kinds of different fact checkers, saying, no, they're not bioweapons laboratories in Ukraine. Well, we actually found out today a couple of interesting pieces of information. One was that back in 2010, there was an article written that showed how Barack Obama, and he was a state senator at the time in 2003 and 4 when this happened, I'm sorry, I don't remember the dates. It was before he was president. He was a state senator. He and federal Senator Dick Lugar worked to bring a level 3 biolab to Ukraine. And somebody had tried to remove this from the internet, which I thought that was very interesting. That all the way back then, before he was in president, Mr. Obama was involved in bringing funding to a biolab in Ukraine. But then it comes out that Victoria Nuland, the Secretary of State, admitted that where there are actually several biolabs in Ukraine, and that they fear that the Russians are out to get those labs and to attack them. And even more information keeps coming out, and this is not something that I confirm or that anybody has confirmed it at this point now, but the Russians have said, they put out a statement. I'm just going to paraphrase it here because we're running out of time. We're not going to watch the video, but if you want to look this up, you can. They put out a statement that the U.S. has accused us of all these different things, but while you all were out looking for weapons of mass destruction all over the world, and they're referring to Iraq and how we said Saddam had the weapons of mass destruction. They said we found your weapons of biological weapons in Ukraine. So the Russians are basically accusing the United States now of having biological or biological weapons laboratories in Ukraine. So that's an interesting development now there, because that goes right to what the conspiracy theorists were saying.
I'm gonna call it expected.
Oh yeah. I think the part that's not expected is that it's being acknowledged openly. Like that Victoria Nuland actually started talking about it in a press conference and said, hey, oh yes, there are these bio labs in Ukraine, and we're worried that the Russians may get them. When before that, the narrative was that it's a conspiracy theory to say that there are, and we get back into the straw man argument again, because you had a lot of the fact checkers, when people said, oh, there are U.S. bioweapons laboratories, they would say, they would focus on that rather than the people who were doing factual reporting and saying, hey, there are actually biolabs in Ukraine that maybe have funding from the United States. They were building up that straw man argument, or maybe it's not a straw man argument, but what seemed to be one, that these are bioweapons laboratories funded by the United States. You see what I'm saying? Like they jump on, okay, like here's a good example of how these fact checkers work. Like if Tim were to, if I were to say, Tim Nave, he perfectly played the guitar solo to Through the Fire and the Flames by Dragon Force on Sunday. The fact checkers would say, oh, well, actually, that's technically false, because even though Tim did play completely and perfectly the guitar solo to Through the Fire and the Flames, it was actually at 11:59 a.m. or 11:59 p.m. on Saturday, so it's technically not Sunday. So we rate this claim mostly false. So that's the way they tend to do these things. So when you see these fact check things, I'm automatically suspicious. But I guess we'll just have to see what happens here. But that I thought that was an interesting development, and I couldn't end the show with not bringing it up. But I think that'll be enough for tonight. We want to thank you for joining us. Tim, do you have anything to add?
Nope, we're good.
All right. Well, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when we go live. Email us at theironmountainhour@gmail.com. Look for us this Sunday at 10 p.m. We're going to be live. We're going to try to have Drew Shingleton back in. That's his last name, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to try to have Drew Shingleton back in the studio to go over, especially with the story about the Fed creating, or Joe Biden signing the executive order to look at creating a U.S. digital currency. I want to have Drew back in if he'll join us to discuss what that might mean, and we'll get into a little bit of more crypto. I think that'd be a good idea. But thank you for joining us. Like and subscribe. Share with your friends. Get them to subscribe. Our subscribers have kind of tapered off a little bit, but our views are still kicking. So share this shit. Get us around there. We'd appreciate it. And check us out, theironmountainhour@gmail.com, if you have anything to add to the conversation. Have a good week, and we'll see you Sunday night.